I built everything I have from nothing, and I mean that literally. My mother worked double shifts at a laundromat in Columbus, Ohio for most of my childhood. We shared a two-bedroom apartment with my aunt and her 3 kids until I was 14. I didn't grow up with a safety net. I grew up with a calculator and a scholarship application, and I fought for every single thing that came after. By the time I was 28, I had a master's degree in accounting, a job at a regional audit firm, and a one-bedroom apartment that I paid for entirely by myself. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. My boyfriend. I'll call him my boyfriend because that's what he was, even though some days it felt like I was auditioning to be something more. Had been in my life for almost 2 years. He was charming in that easy, unhurried way that comes from never having to work particularly hard for anything. His family had money, old money, the quiet kind that doesn't need to announce itself. His mother collected antique silverware. His father sat on 3 nonprofit boards. They lived in a house outside Cincinnati with a circular driveway and a guest house they used for storage. The first time I met them, his mother shook my hand and immediately asked which part of Columbus I was from, and when I told her, she smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes and said, "How interesting." I told myself I was imagining things. I was not imagining things. The dinners at their house started happening once a month, then more frequently as my boyfriend began hinting at our future together. His sister would be there sometimes, his parents always. It was never comfortable, but I told myself that was normal. That meeting a partner's family was supposed to feel awkward at first. That I just needed to give it time. The first time it happened, I thought I was coming down with something. We'd had dinner, his mother made pot roast, which seemed like a deliberate choice given that I'd mentioned being vegetarian, and I'd sipped the sparkling water they'd poured for me because I don't drink alcohol at other people's homes. An hour later, I felt it. This heavy, suffocating fog settling behind my eyes. Not tiredness, something heavier than tiredness, something wrong. I remember excusing myself from the table. I remember my boyfriend guiding me to the sitting room down the hall, the one with the pale blue walls and the cream-colored sofa they never sat on themselves. I remember thinking I should call someone, and then I don't remember anything at all. I woke up and the room was dark. My phone said it was past 11. I'd been out for nearly 3 hours. My boyfriend was sitting in the armchair across from me and he looked, I don't know how to describe it, composed. Too composed for a man whose girlfriend had just passed out inexplicably. "You were exhausted," he said. "You work too hard." I looked down and my blazer was on the cushion beside me, folded. I hadn't taken it off. I remembered specifically not taking it off because his mother kept the house cold and I'd been wearing it when I sat down. I didn't say anything then. I let him drive me home. I sat in the passenger seat and stared at the highway and told myself it was the stress, the long weeks, the fact that I'd skipped lunch. I told myself that for about 4 days, then it happened again. Second dinner 2 months later, different menu, same sparkling water, same heavy fog 2 hours in, same cream sofa, same 3-hour gap I couldn't account for. This time when I woke up, there was a faint smear on the collar of my blouse from my own lipstick, like someone had adjusted the neckline and hadn't quite put it back right. My earring was missing. I found it on the coffee table, not near the sofa where I'd been lying. My boyfriend had the same explanation. Exhaustion. Stress. "You need to slow down, babe." I smiled and nodded and went home and sat on my kitchen floor for a long time. Here is what I did not do. I did not dismiss it a second time. I didn't go to the police, not yet. Because what would I say? I feel weird when I go to my boyfriend's parents' house. My earring was in a different spot. I had no proof of anything. What I did do was call my closest friend. She's known me since college, and she has zero patience for nonsense. And I told her everything, every detail. The fog, the sofa, the blazer, the earring, the smeared collar. She didn't say, "You're probably just tired." She said, "You need to get a full tox panel done and you need to start documenting everything right now." So I did. The third dinner invitation came 6 weeks later. My boyfriend framed it as a peace offering. His mother wanted to apologize for something sharp she'd said to me at a family barbecue in July, something about my neighborhood that she'd later claimed was a joke. I agreed to come. I had a plan. The morning of the dinner, I had a baseline blood draw done at an urgent care clinic. I told them I was monitoring my iron levels. I kept the paperwork in my work bag. I also set up the screen recording software I use for client audits on my laptop, the kind that runs silently in the background and captures everything. And I left that laptop in my bag, slightly open, the camera facing out through the gap in the zipper. Battery fully charged, motion-sensitive microphone enabled. I wore a blazer with no jewelry, nothing to displace. Dinner was lamb chops and roasted vegetables. His mother had made a point of there being a vegetarian option this time, a small gesture she clearly wanted credit for. I ate carefully and drank the sparkling water and watched, and I waited. The fog came right on schedule. I had just enough time, maybe 30 seconds, a minute at most, to do what I'd practiced. I reached into my bag and pressed the voice memo app on my phone. Then I closed my bag carefully and set it on the cushion beside me, and I let myself go under. When I woke up, it was 12:47 in the morning. The house was quiet. Different this time. Before, there had always been the faint sound of someone moving around, dishes, television. This time it was completely still. My boyfriend was not in the armchair. I was alone in the sitting room. My blazer was on the floor, folded, but on the floor. I sat up slowly and reached into my bag. My phone was where I'd left it. The voice memo had been recording for 4 hours and 18 minutes. My laptop was exactly as I'd positioned it. I didn't listen to anything right then. I put on my blazer. I found my boyfriend in the kitchen eating cereal, which struck me as one of the stranger things I'd witnessed that night, and I told him I needed to go home. He drove me. He talked about a work thing. I made sounds like I was listening. At home, I locked my door, poured myself a glass of water, and opened my laptop. The video file was 3 hours and 42 minutes long. I didn't watch all of it that night. The first 20 minutes were enough. His father came in first. He went directly to my bag, removed my laptop, and carried it to the dining room table. His mother followed. Then his sister. They weren't quiet about it. They spoke at a normal conversational volume because they believed I was unconscious and they believed they were alone. His father pulled up my work files. I am an auditor, and at the time I was working on a long-term contract with a regional development company, the kind of firm that manages commercial real estate, manages it poorly, and occasionally needs someone from the outside to confirm that the books are as clean as the principals claim. They were not clean. I had documentation of that, and apparently his father, who sat on the advisory board of a holding company with direct financial ties to my client, knew that I had that documentation. I watched his father navigate my files with the practiced confidence of someone who had done this before. I watched his sister stand beside him with her arms crossed. I watched his mother ask, "Did you find it?" and his father say, "Not yet." They were looking for my draft report, the preliminary findings I hadn't filed yet. His sister said something that I had to replay 3 times because I couldn't quite process it the first 2 times. She said, "She's been suspicious for weeks. She almost didn't come tonight. We can't keep doing this. Next time we need everything." I stopped the recording. I sat in my kitchen. I thought about the last 8 months of my life. Then I called my friend. She answered on the second ring. It was almost 2 in the morning. She listened to everything I said without interrupting, which is how I know she understood the gravity of it, because she interrupts almost constantly under normal circumstances. "Okay," she said. "You're not going to confront anyone yet. You're going to get a lawyer, and you're going to get a second blood draw tomorrow morning because if anything's still in your system, it has a short window, and you are not going back to that house." I got a second blood draw at 6:15 the next morning. The tox panel came back 48 hours later. A sedative compound, the kind used in certain anti-anxiety medications, but not prescribed to me, not in my medical history anywhere, present at levels inconsistent with accidental exposure. I had a lawyer by the end of that week. A friend of a friend, someone who specialized in civil litigation and had no connections to my firm, my client, or my boyfriend's family. I laid everything out for her on a Tuesday afternoon, the recordings, the tox results, the timeline, the baseline blood draw I'd done before the dinner. She listened and took 17 pages of notes, and then she said, "This is obstruction of a federal audit, potential drugging charges, and depending on what's on that recording, possibly conspiracy. You need to make copies of everything, and you need to stop going to work with your original files. Everything moves to secure storage starting today." I did everything she said. For 3 weeks I heard nothing. I went to work. I filed an amended contract extension with my client under the guise of needing more time for a comprehensive review, which wasn't untrue. I saw my boyfriend twice for coffee, and I was pleasant and calm, and I gave nothing away. He proposed on a Thursday. We were at the coffee shop near my office, the one with the mismatched chairs and the chalkboard menu, and he put a ring on the table between our cups and said his family adored me and he wanted to build a future with me and he thought this was the right time. I looked at the ring. Princess cut, platinum band, tasteful. His mother had probably picked it out. I said I needed a few days to think. He looked surprised. He'd clearly expected a different answer, and the surprise cracked something in his composure for just a moment, just long enough for me to see something underneath it that I recognized, something calculating. "Of course," he said, and smiled. "Take all the time you need." My lawyer had been working during those 3 weeks. She'd shared the relevant portions of my documentation, carefully, legally, through appropriate channels, with the oversight body that had jurisdiction over my audit client. She'd also filed a formal complaint with the state licensing board regarding potential interference with an independent audit. And she'd had a very quiet conversation with a contact at the county D office. The morning after the proposal, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was an investigator. She asked if I'd be willing to come in and provide a formal statement. I said yes. My boyfriend called 4 times that day. I let them all go to voicemail. His mother called once, which had never happened before. My lawyer told me to stay calm and stay invisible, so I did. 2 Saturdays later, his family hosted a fundraiser dinner at a venue in Hyde Park, one of those events where everyone pays $400 a plate and congratulates themselves on their philanthropy. My boyfriend had invited me months ago, before any of this, and I had told him I'd come. My lawyer and I had a long conversation about whether I should attend. We decided I should. I wore a black dress and low heels, and I arrived exactly on time. My boyfriend met me at the entrance and kissed my cheek, and I smiled and took his arm, and we walked into a room full of people who had no idea what was about to happen. His father was at the front of the room, working the crowd the way he always did. Handshakes, laughter, the practiced warmth of a man who needed people to trust him. His mother was beside him in a green dress. His sister was near the bar. Everyone was playing their roles. I had a glass of water, sparkling from a sealed bottle I'd opened myself, and I moved through the room. I spoke to people I'd met at previous events. I was pleasant. I was calm. About an hour in, the investigators arrived. There were 3 of them, and they were quiet and professional about it, and they waited until his father finished shaking someone's hand, and then one of them stepped forward and said something very close to his ear. His father went still in a way I'd never seen before. Not shocked, more like a man who had been waiting for something and finally heard the knock at the door. His mother saw it from across the room. She started toward them and was intercepted. His sister was on her phone almost immediately, and then 2 more people were there, and she stopped. My boyfriend was standing next to me when it happened. I felt him go rigid. He turned to look at me, and his face did something complicated. Confusion, then something dawning, then something I don't have a clean word for. "What did you do?" he said. Low, not quite a whisper. "I documented everything," I said. "The way I always do." He took a step back. Just 1 step, but it was enough. I didn't stay for the rest of it. I said goodbye to no one in particular, and I walked out through the front entrance and stood on the sidewalk, in the October cold, for a moment, just breathing. My friend was parked half a block away, which I had arranged in advance, because she is the kind of person who shows up. I got in the passenger seat and she handed me a thermos of tea without saying anything, and we drove away. The charges were filed the following month. His father faced obstruction and corporate fraud counts. His sister was named in a civil complaint related to the audit interference. There were 3 other individuals connected to the holding company who had been aware of and facilitated the scheme. My boyfriend was not charged with anything. He had been, as far as the investigators could determine, aware that his family wanted to get into my files, and he had helped arrange the conditions under which they could do so. Whether he knew about the sedative, whether he'd known exactly what his mother was putting in my sparkling water, I don't know. The investigators said the evidence was circumstantial on that specific point. His attorney made the argument that he was peripheral. I did not find that particularly satisfying. I want to be honest about that. His mother and his sister were both named in the criminal complaint related to the drugging. That one was clearer. They had purchased the compound, they were present on all 3 occasions, and the recording from the 3rd night was unambiguous. They did not spend as long in legal proceedings as I would have liked, but they were not allowed to simply walk away either. My audit report was filed in full, without interference, in November. The development company it concerned faced a separate regulatory investigation. That part of the story doesn't belong to me, and I'll leave it there. I handed in my notice at the firm in December. I'd been offered a position with a larger group based in Chicago. Better resources, better pay, and a city where nobody knew my name or my boyfriend's family, or the house with the circular driveway outside Cincinnati. I took it. The ring he'd left on the table between our coffee cups arrived in the mail about a week after the fundraiser. No note, just the ring in a small padded envelope, addressed in his handwriting. I donated it, one of those organizations that repurposes jewelry to fund scholarships. It felt like the right thing to do. Put something that was meant to trap me toward something that might help someone else build their way out. My mother called me when everything became public. She'd seen something online and she was worried, and then she was furious on my behalf, and then she was crying a little, which she almost never does. She said, "I always taught you to be careful who you let in." I said, "You did, Mom. I just needed a little time to remember it." There's something nobody tells you about being the person who fights back. It doesn't feel triumphant in the moment. It feels exhausting and cold and bureaucratic, and there's a lot of sitting in offices and signing things and waiting. The feeling people expect you to have, that cinematic surge of satisfaction, comes later. It comes in small pieces. It comes when you sign a lease in a new city and the building is yours. When you file a clean report and know nobody interfered with it. When you stop checking the door before you fall asleep. I built everything I have from nothing, and when someone tried to take it apart from underneath me, I built a case instead. That was enough. That was more than enough.